The evening glittered with soft golden lights that seemed to sway in rhythm with the music spilling from the grand ballroom. Laughter echoed like champagne bubbles, rising and bursting into the air, while polished marble floors reflected the elegance of people who had never known the ache of hunger or the humiliation of poverty. In the farthest corner, just by the heavy velvet curtains, stood a little girl named Maya. She was barely 9 years old, her dark hair neatly braided by her mother's loving but tired hands that morning. Her dress, once white, had faded into an uneven shade of cream. The hem was frayed, the fabric thin, the lace collar slightly torn, a dress that had been worn, washed, and mended far too many times. She had not come to the ball by choice. Her mother, Mrs. Daniels, worked as a server at the event, one of the many staff bustling quietly to make the wealthy guests feel comfortable. Tonight, she had no one to leave Maya with. The girl had promised to sit quietly in the corner while her mother worked. And so, here she was, clutching a small paperback book she had read a dozen times, trying to disappear into the background. But children notice children. And sometimes, children can be crueler than the adults who taught them better. Two girls, dressed in satin gowns that shimmered like moonlight, spotted her. They were around her age, but carried themselves with the poise of people used to attention. They walked toward Maya, giggling behind manicured hands. "Is that your dress?" one of them asked, her voice dripping with mockery. Maya froze. She nodded faintly. "It looks like it came from a thrift store." The second girl tilted her head, her sparkling earrings catching the light. "Actually, maybe not even from there. My mom would never let me wear something so old." The giggles grew sharper, like tiny shards of glass. One of them reached out and rubbed the fabric between her fingers, as though inspecting something dirty. "You know," she whispered loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "this is a charity event, but I didn't think it was that kind of charity." A ripple of laughter spread among a small cluster of people who had overheard. Maya's cheeks burned crimson. She stared down at her scuffed shoes, wishing they could swallow her whole. Somewhere in the crowd, a man had been watching. He was tall, with a presence that seemed to part the air when he moved. His suit was tailored so perfectly it seemed woven into his very being, but it wasn't his clothes that made him stand out. It was his eyes, sharp, but not unkind. His name was Ethan Cole, a man whispered about in corporate halls as the youngest self-made millionaire CEO in the city. People said he was ruthless in business, but there were others who knew a different side, the boy who had once been invisible at a rich man's party. And in Maya's slumped shoulders, Ethan saw a memory of himself. He put down his champagne glass, excused himself from a cluster of investors, and walked toward her. The music swelled with the tempo of a slow waltz, couples beginning to drift to the dance floor. Maya noticed him only when the room seemed to quiet around them. Kneeling slightly so he was at her eye level, Ethan smiled warmly. "Hi there," he said gently. "What's your name?" "Maya," she stammered. "Well, Maya. I was wondering," he extended a hand toward her. "Would you do me the honor of dancing with me?" Gasps spread like wildfire. The girls who had mocked her froze, their mouths falling open. Adults paused mid-conversation. A little girl in a faded dress, being asked to dance by Ethan Cole. It was unthinkable, and unforgettable. Maya blinked in disbelief. I don't know how." "That's all right," Ethan said, his voice soft enough for only her to hear. "When I was your age, someone told me that dancing isn't about knowing the steps, it's about knowing you belong. And you belong here tonight." Something inside her chest loosened. Slowly, shyly, she placed her small hand in his. Ethan led her to the center of the ballroom. The spotlight, as if obeying some unspoken command, found them. The orchestra played on, but the room felt quieter now. With careful steps, Ethan guided her into a gentle waltz. He matched his movements to hers, turning even her missteps into graceful sways. Her faded dress twirled, catching the light in ways it never had before. And for those few minutes, Maya wasn't the girl in the old dress. She was the star of the room. When the song ended, Ethan bowed, and the guests erupted into applause, not polite clapping, but something warmer, more genuine. He leaned closer. "You were perfect," he said, then added in a whisper, "Hold your head high. Clothes don't make you worthy, you were born worthy." Before she could answer, he turned to the crowd. "This," he announced, resting a hand gently on Maya's shoulder, "is proof that grace, courage, and kindness outshine anything money can buy. Let's remember that tonight isn't just about wealth, it's about humanity." The room fell into a thoughtful silence. Even the girls who had laughed earlier looked down at their feet. Later that night, as Maya's mother gathered their things to leave, Ethan approached with an envelope. "For Maya," he said, handing it over. Inside was a scholarship offer for one of the best schools in the state, fully paid until college. Mrs. Daniels' voice trembled. Why would you do this?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because someone once did it for me. And I promised I'd pass it on." Years later, Maya would tell the story of that night, how a man in a perfect suit had seen her in an old dress and made her feel like royalty. How a single act of kindness had changed the trajectory of her life. And whenever she saw someone standing alone, feeling small, Maya would remember Ethan's words. "You were born worthy."